trouble sleeping. I'm so sorry to hear that. Perhaps I could, read something for you. I got a new book, so if you wanted me to read for you so you can sleep better, I could read this one, The Hobbit. I am actually a big fan of Tolkien's world. I watched The Lord of the Rings about 50 times or something, so I'm really in love with the world, and I have this book in German already. I read it already, but I wanted to buy it in English and read it in English again because I love English language and how some things sound. I don't know, I like the words, and if you want me to, I can read to you. You can lay back, snuggle into your blanket, and I would read for you. Yeah? Okay. I would love to do that. I would really, really love to do that. I'm happy that you let me read for you. And I really love how the book looks. It's illustrated very pretty, and it also has illustrations like the map to the Lonely Mountain. Right here. Here's the Lonely Mountain with Smaug. The dwarvish runes. Very pretty. Very, very pretty. So, lay back, relax, and I'm gonna read, okay? So, Chapter 1. An Unexpected Party. In a hole in the ground there lived a hobbit. Not a nasty, dirty, wet hole filled with the ends of worms and an oozy smell, nor yet a dry, bare, sandy hole with nothing in it to sit down or to eat. It was a hobbit hole, and that means comfort. It had a perfectly round door, like a porthole, painted green, with a shiny yellow brass knob in the exact middle. The door opened on a tube-shaped hall like a tunnel, a very comfortable tunnel without smoke, with paneled walls and floors tiled and carpeted, provided with polished chairs and lots of pegs for heads and coats. The hobbit was fond of visitors. The tunnel wound on and on, going fairly, but not quite straight into the side of the hill, as all the people for many miles around called it, and many little round doors opened out of it, first on one side and then on another. No going upstairs for the hobbits. Bedroom, bathroom, cellars, pantries, lots of these, wardrobes. He had whole rooms devoted to clothes, kitchens, dining rooms. All were on the same floor, and indeed on the same passage. The best rooms were all on the left-hand side going in, for these were the only ones to have windows, deep-set round windows, looking for his garden and meadows beyond, sloping down to the river. The hobbit was a very well-to-do hobbit, and his name was Baggins. The Bagginses had lived in the neighborhood of the hill for time out of mind, and people considered them very respectable, not only because most of them were rich, but also because they never had any adventure or did anything unexpected. You could tell what a Baggins would say on any question without the bother of asking him. This is the story of how Baggins had an adventure and found himself doing insane things altogether unexpected. He may have lost the neighbors' respect, but he gained, well, you will see whether he gained anything at the end. the mother of our particular hobbit. What is a hobbit? I suppose hobbits need some description nowadays, since they have become rare and shy of the big people, as they call us. They are, or were, little people about half our height and smaller than bearded dwarves. Hobbits have no beards. There's a little or no magic about them, except the ordinary everyday sort which helps them to disappear quietly and quickly when large stupid folk like you and me come blundering along, making a noise like elephants which they can hear a mile off. They are inclined to be fat in the stomach. They dress in bright colors, chiefly green and yellow, wear no shoes because their feet naturally grow leathery soles and thick warm brown hair like the stuff on their heads, which is curly, have long clever brown fingers, good-natured faces, and love deep fruity loves, especially after dinner, which they have twice a day when they can get it. Now you know enough to go on with. As I was saying, the mother of the hobbit, of Bilbo Baggins that is, was the famous Belladonna Took, one of the 3 remarkable daughters of the old Took, head of the hobbits who lived across the water, the small river that ran at the foot of the hill. It was often said in other families that long ago one of the Took ancestors must have taken a fairy wife. That was of course absurd, but certainly there was still something not entirely hobbit-like about them, and once in a while members of the Took clan would go and have adventures. They discreetly disappeared, and the family hushed it up, but the fact remained that the Tooks were not as respectable as the Bagginses, though they were undoubtedly richer. Not that Belladonna Took ever had any adventures after she became Mrs. Bungo Baggins. Bungo was Bilbo's father, built the most luxurious hobbit hole for her, and partly with her money. It was to be found either under the hill or over the hill or across the water. And there they remained to the end of their days. Still it is probable that Bilbo, her only son, although he looked and behaved exactly like a second edition of his solid and comfortable father, got something a bit queer in his make-up from the Took side, something that only waited for a chance to come out. The chance never arrived until Bilbo Baggins grown up, being about 50 years old or so, and living in a beautiful hobbit hole built by his father, which I have just described for you, until he had in fact apparently settled down immovably. By some curious chance, one morning long ago, in the quiet of the world, when there was less noise and more green, and the hobbits were still numerous and prosperous, and Bilbo Baggins was standing at his door after breakfast, smoking an enormous long wooden pipe that reached nearly down to his woolly toes, neatly brushed, Gandalf came by. Gandalf! If you had heard only a quarter of what I have heard about him, and I have only heard very little of all there is to hear, you would be prepared for any sort of remarkable tale. Tales and adventures sprouted up all over the place, wherever he went, in the most extraordinary fashion. He had not been down that way under the hill for ages and ages, not since his friend the old Took died, in fact, and the hobbits had almost forgotten what he looked like. He He had been away over the hill and across the water on businesses for his own, since they were all small hobbit boys and hobbit girls. All that the unsuspecting Bilbo saw that morning was an old man with a staff, and had a tall, pointed blue head, a long grey cloak, a silver scarf over which his long white beard hung, down below his waist, and immense black boots. "Good morning," said Bilbo, and he meant it. The sun was shining, and the grass was very green. But Gandalf looked at him from under long bushy eyebrows and stuck out further than the brim of his shady hat. "What do you mean?" he said. "Do you wish me a good morning? Or mean that it is a good morning whether I want it or not? Or that you feel good this morning? Or that it is a morning to be good on?" "All of them at once," said Bilbo, "and a very fine morning for a pipe of tobacco out of doors into the bargain." "If you have a pipe about you, sit down and have a fill of mine. There's no hurry to have all the day before us." Then Bilbo sat down on a seat by his door, crossed his legs, and blew out a beautiful grey ring of smoke that sailed up into the air without breaking and floated away over the hill. "Very pretty," said Gandalf, "but I have no time to blow smoke rings this morning. I am looking for someone to share an adventure that I am arranging, and it's very difficult to find anyone." "I should think so, in these parts. We are plain quiet folk, and have no use for adventures. Nasty, disturbing, uncomfortable things. Make you late for dinner. I can't think what anybody sees in them," said our Mr. Baggins, and stuck one thumb behind his braces and blew out another even bigger smoke ring. Then he took out his morning letters and began to read, pretending to take no more notice of the old man. He had decided that he was not quite of his sort, and wanted him to go away, but the old man did not move. He stood, leaning on his stick and gazing at the hobbit without saying anything, till Bilbo got quite uncomfortable and even a little cross. "Good morning," he said at last. "We don't want any adventures here, thank you. You might try over the hill or across the water." By this he meant that the conversation was at an end. "What a lot of things you do use good morning for," said Gandalf. "Now you mean that you want to get rid of me, and that I won't be good till I move on." Not at all, my dear sir. Let me see, I don't think I know your name." Yes, my dear sir, and I do know your name, Mr. Bilbo Baggins, and you do know my name, though you don't remember that it belonged to me. I am Gandalf, and Gandalf means me. To think that I should have lived to be good morning to my belladonna Took's son, as if I was selling buttons at the door. Gandalf, good gracious me, not the wandering wizard that gave old Took a pair of magic diamond studs that fastened himself and never came undone till ordered? Not the fellow who to tell such wonderful tales at parties about dragons and goblins and giants and the rescue of princesses and the unexpected luck of widow's son. Not the man that used to make such particularly excellent fireworks. I remember those. Old Took used to have them on Midsummer's Eve. Splendid. They used to go up like great lilies and snapdragons and laburnums of fire and hang in the twilight of all evenings. You will notice already that Mr. Baggins was not quite so prosy as he liked to believe, also that he was very fond of flowers. Dear me, he went on, Not the Gandalf who was responsible for so many quiet lads and lasses going off into the blue for mad adventures. Anything from climbing trees to visiting elves or sailing in ships, sailing to other shores. Bless me, life used to be quite I mean, you used to upset things badly in these parts once upon a time. I beg your pardon, but I had no idea you were still in business. Where else should I be? Said the wizard. All the same, I am pleasant to find you remember something about me. You seem to remember my fireworks kindly, at any rate, and that is not without hope. Indeed, you have your old grandfather Took's sake, and for the sake of poor Belladonna I will give you what you ask for. I beg your pardon, I haven't asked for anything. Yes, you have, twice now, my pardon. I give it to you. In fact, I will go as far as to send you on this adventure. Very amusing for me, very good for you, and profitable too. Very likely, if you ever get over it. Sorry, I don't want any adventures, thank you. Not today. Good morning, but please come to tea any time you like. Why not tomorrow? Come tomorrow. Goodbye. With that the hobbit turned and scuttled inside his round green door and shut it quickly, as he dared not to seem rude. Wizards, after all, are wizards. What on earth did I ask him to tea for? He said to himself as he went to the pantry. He had only just had breakfast, but he thought a cake or two and a drink of something would do him good after this fright. Gandalf, in the meantime, was still standing outside the door and laughing, long but quietly. After a while he stepped up, and with the spike of his staff scratched a queer sign on the hobbit's beautiful green front door, and then strode away, just about the time when Bilbo was finished his second cake and beginning to think that he had escaped adventures very well. The next day he had almost forgotten about Gandalf, and he did not remember things very well unless he put them down on his engagement tablet, like this: Gandalf Tea Wednesday. Yesterday he had been too flushed to do anything of the kind. But before tea time there came a tremendous ring on the front door, and then he remembered. He rushed and put on a kettle and put out another cup and saucer and an extra cake or two, and ran to the door. "I'm so sorry to keep you waiting," he was going to say, but he saw that it was not Gandalf at all. It was a dwarf with a blue beard tucked into a golden belt and very bright eyes under his dark green hood. As soon as the door was opened, he pushed inside, just as if he had been expected. He hung his hood cloak on the nearest peg, and "Dwalin, at your service," he said with a low bow. Bilbo Baggins, at yours," said the hobbit, too surprised to ask any questions at the moment. When the silence that followed had become uncomfortable, he added, "I am just about to take tea. Pray come and have some with me." A little stiff, perhaps, but he meant it kindly. And what would you do if an uninvited dwarf came and hung his things up in your wall without a word of explanation? They had not been a table long. In fact, they had hardly reached the third cake when there came another even louder ring at the bell. "Excuse me," said the hobbit, and off he went to the door. "So you have got here at last." That was what he was going to say to Gandalf this time, but it was not Gandalf. Instead, there was a very old-looking dwarf on the step with a white beard and scarlet hood, and he too hopped inside as soon as the door was opened, just as if he had been invited. I see they have begun to arrive already," he said, when he caught sight of Dwalin's green hood hanging up. He hung his red one next to it, and Balin, at your service, he said with his hand on his breast. Thank you, said Bilbo with a gasp. It was not the correct thing to say, but they have begun to arrive has fluttered him badly. He liked visitors, but he liked to know them before they arrived, and he preferred to ask them himself. He had a horrible thought that the cakes might run short, and then he, as the host, he knew his duty and stuck to it, however painful he might have to go without. Come along in and have some tea, he managed to say after taking a deep breath. A little beer would suit me better, if it is all the same to you, my good sir, said Balin with the white beard, but I don't mind some cake. Seed cake, if you have any. Lots. Bilbo found himself answering on his own surprise, and he found himself stuttling off, too, to the cellar to fill a pint beer mug, and then to the pantry to fetch 2 beautiful round seed cakes, which he had baked that afternoon for his after-supper morsel. When he got back, Balin and Dwalin were talking at table like old friends. As a matter of fact, they were brothers. Bilbo plumped down the beer and the cake in front of them. Then loud came a ring at the bell, and then another ring.